Good morning, everyone. We'll stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning again. We will start off with the agenda approval. Were there any changes?
We're still pulling item 6B and holding that over to next week, or January, right?
Yeah.
So we're pulling 6B, and that is the only change I'm aware of.
Alrighty. With that, if I could get a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Shar.
Second.
Thank you, David. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Public input. Is there any public input this morning? With that, then, we will close public input and move on to the consent agenda. Once again, any changes on the consent agenda? No? Okay. If I can get a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
Thank you, Shar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we move on to the county employee recognition. Got quite a bit going on today. Today we have, we'll start off with the Sheriff's Department. Nicholas R. Opus, Deputy Sheriff, began the full-time position on December 4th of 2022. Now we'll move on to the 2022 Annual Service Awards. We'll start off with the recognition of 5 years of service.
Maybe we could hold our applause until at the end of each section or else. Okay.
Okay, we'll start off with the Attorney's Office with Sherry L. Cunningham. This is for 5 years of service. Sherry's not here today. Next, we'll move on to Human Resources. Human Resource Director, Gina Teens. And next, we have Natural Resource Manager, Jacob A. Karanen, for 5 years of service. Jacob is not here today. Sheriff's Dispatch Jailer, Rhonda Ejaz, another 5 years of service. Thank you. Patrol Sergeant Seth Coons. Seth here this morning? Alrighty. Dispatcher Jailer, Forrest P. Mills. Forrest is not here this morning. Social Services, Transit Driver Jill J. Arvig. Social Services, Case Aide Lisa Brandstrom.
Yes.
Alrighty. I hope I said that correctly.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have Social Services, Social Worker, Children's Services, Garrett Lind. Alrighty. I'll move on to the tenure. We have Social Services, Social Worker, Adult Assistant, Megan Cox. Thank you, Megan. And next, we have Social Services Eligibility Worker, Danielle Dalton. Thank you. And next, for Social Services, Child Support Officer, Elizabeth Pimonte.
Close. Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the 15-year, where we have Facilities Maintenance Technician 2, Stephen Guthling? Nope, he's not here today. Highway Maintenance 2 Foreman, Highway Christopher Farden. Good morning, and thank you.
Good morning, thank you.
Next, we have, again, the Highway Department, Highway Engineer, Public Works Coordinator, Jed Nordine.
That's it.
Then next, the Sheriff's Department, Jail Program Coordinator, Holly Mall. And Social Services, Eligibility Worker, Corin Block. Karina? 15 years of service, thank you all. Now we'll move on to the 20-year. The Attorney Office, we have Crime Victim Coordinator Jill Christensen. And next we have Highway Engineer Specialist Thomas Johnson. And we have Sheriff's Department Investigator Chad Olson.
Thank you.
Okay, that was for 20 years. We'll move on to the 25 years of service. Attorney, Crime Victim Coordinator Jill Christensen.
Oh, you agreed to go to 25.
Oh, excuse me. Assessor, Deputy Assessor, Certified Appraiser Jill Thompson. Had the Jill part right.
I know.
Okay, and Highway Maintenance 2, David Kalstorff. And once again with the highway, we have Maintenance Superintendent Highway Herbert McCormick. Alrighty. And last, for the 35 years, we have Auditor Treasurer Sandra Rickers. You don't have Herb McCormick's certificate, do you? Okay, because I don't see Herb's here. But Herb wasn't here either. So.
Okay. We'll make a note of that.
Yes.
Sure it gets
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Congratulations.
I'd like to come out to have a picture and take a copy. Good job, Dad, that's hard, those names.
Okay, there it is. Yes. Okay, we'll move on. Next on the agenda is Highway Survey.
Do you want to get your picture taken first?
I think I'll stay here. All right, good morning. Couple things on the agenda for you today. First up is review and approve a final payment for project SAP 029-607-009. This was our CASA 7 project from County 40 up to the end of the pavement on County Road 91. Mark Sand and Gravel, and final payment would be in the amount of $176,298.10. All paperwork is in order, and we're ready to final it out.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Thank you, Shar. Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, and the second deal we've got on here is to review and approve quotes for, re-quotes for our tandem plow trucks. Kind of starting to sound like a broken record on this deal, but the suppliers of these pieces of equipment are running into problems too, and so we received another letter from the supplier, the manufacturer, I guess not the supplier, but the manufacturer of Mack trucks, in that still having supply chain issues. They need to put a $4,000 surcharge, so this is the second surcharge that will have been added to the initial approval for these trucks. Our only other option with this company anyway is to cancel the orders, and they give us that option, but, you know, we do like the Max. We've had really good luck with the Max. We're not really ready to change that, and so I guess that's what I would ask for approval, is to reapprove the new quotes at $274,662, and that is for 2 tandem trucks. Still no timeline on when these will be delivered, but these are 2024 Mack trucks.
Plus, if you switched, who knows the timeline?
Yeah, you don't know the timeline, you don't know the pricing of that either. I mean, we can look at state contract stuff, but they're running into the same things as these two. So the one good thing about these trucks so far is we haven't heard anything from the box and the plow portion of these trucks, and so we're still with our original bid on that. If we were to switch, we would have to go back out for that too, because it's just a different hookup with a different brand of truck too. So we're interested in staying with the Max. It's still better pricing than what we're hearing for the future. So I would recommend that we accept the surcharge and reorder these trucks.
And like you say, I don't know what other options we would have,
No,
viable options.
right, yep.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Very good. That's all we've got.
Thank you. I'll go out there and get your picture taken.
Hopefully it took long enough.
Okay.
Next, we move on to natural resource management. Morning.
Good morning. I think I've been with everybody here on the board before, but just to refresh, Mike Lichter, Area Forest Supervisor here in Park Rapids. And Joe, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Joe Orsinski, Area Supervisor for the Bemidji Forestry Area, and we cover the northern 3 tiers of townships in Hubbard County.
Yeah, Township 142 and south, like Clay and south is Park Rapids, and everything else is Bemidji. Okay, so we're here today to talk about some potential land acquisitions, and I'll back up a little bit and just introduce the notions that we started with here a few years back. So you should have received a letter or an email in October kind of outlining our plan to visit townships here. The subject at hand is that, you know, starting in from 2015 to 2018, I visited here, I think 3 different times on small parcels, land acquisitions, mostly in like White Oak, Bedora townships. And we talked about, you know, we got consensus from the board and we acquired some of those parcels when Potlatch was divesting of those, you know, kind of one piece at a time. And then we bumped into the sheep ranch. I think it was in late 2018. And I think from some of the urgings of the board and some thought process, we ended up going out to the township and getting their opinions. And since then, that was kind of our model. We've talked a few times. Since then, Joe and I went to 4 different townships there in 2018 and 19. That was Clay for the sheep ranch, Lake George for the lands right north of the community of Lake George, Lakeport Township for the block by Cabacona Creek, and then we had a cluster of parcels in White Oak. So those lands we've met on before. That totaled about 4,000 acres that we had township support and board discussion and consensus, and we were pursuing funding. We acquired about 500 acres of those 4,000 acres in 2019. But funding was a slow train to get moving, and the conservation fund, the conservation organization, in the meantime came in and acquired like 72,000 acres, the entire Potlatch land holdings in Minnesota, which you're familiar with, I believe. And that kind of stalled our project with the sheep ranch and some of these other larger pieces, just because it was obvious that we needed to probably back up and look at the whole picture. That project has been rolling this year where we've evaluated all of the lands in Hubbard County owned by the TCF. After meeting with you about a year and a half ago, Chip and I had reviewed the land holdings in Hubbard County. And, you know, some of them are very obvious, you know, interlocked with county lands. Others are the same with state forest lands. So we kind of came up with a loose agreement to pursue certain parcels or not, depending on where they fell on the map. So what we have done in the last month is gone out to the lands that the DNR had looked at as best viable options for DNR state forest lands, and met with those townships. It ended up being 10 different townships, 4 of which were in the Bemidji area, 6 in the Park Rapids area. And we got an opinion there. The townships received a map, you know, kind of in detail of where those parcels were. And then I worked up a sheet, Joe did something similar, where they got a good description of tax versus PILT, and to see where that fell. And let the discussion go from there. And I can say from the Park Rapids side of things, I didn't, you know, we're not interested in making a sell here. We're looking at getting that opinion, and I was clear with the town boards and that if the community didn't want this, that's gonna carry the day, and let them decide. And we talked, you know, in detail on the PILT and the revenue. But oftentimes the conversation would quickly go from, once they got their questions answered there, would move into kind of the setting. And I would say in summary, most of the discussion was around, you know, what they wanted their local setting to be, and we went from there. So what I have a packet that I will email you. It was too big to hand out today, but it was a summary of all the maps from the townships, along with their letter of opinion. On the 6 townships that I attended, the discussion was, you know, went in all directions with critical questions, but had unanimous support in the 6 townships that I attended. And their letters or minutes, or, you know, fall accordingly here. With that, I guess I would, I'll turn it over to Joe. You can, if you want to talk about what you saw in your townships, and then we can kind of dig into the map and open it up for questions.
Sure. Like Mike said, it was very similar for the townships I visited. Almost unanimous support. I had one township supervisor who did vote against it in Hendrickson, but I think he was more, he had issues with some of the wildlife management and pine management that's gone on in the past, and not so much against acquisition of the land, but voted against it for that reason, I guess. But very similar conversations that Mike had with his townships, and, you know, pretty much overwhelming support for DNR to try to acquire these lands.
So, before we open to questions, I'll direct you here to the packet a little bit. I've got some highlights there with the acres. Today, you know, we're talking with these 10 townships, we were talking about a sum of 5,950 acres. That's in the 4th bullet there. Of those acres, in the 3rd bullet, about 3,560 acres were acres that we'd talked about in the past. So about 2/3 of this was, you know, projects that we've talked about before and was just put on hold, but we revisited those, gave those townships a chance to, you know, change their opinion or renew it. In this case, they renewed it. So the balance is about 2,390 acres that were new scattered parcels, you know, parcels in like Hubbard Township by Big Stony Lake, and some in White Oak and Bedora were probably the majority of those acres, as well as a few smaller parcels in the northern part of the county. And then if you have a map, which you should have received also on email, and then the 3rd page is a summary similar to the one that the townships got. The only difference is the townships each had their own numbers, and then I added a couple lines that spoke directly to their levy. So you can see the total tax on this land is $63,566 based on the 2022 tax statement. with those current taxable market values, which is, it's obviously not gonna stay there, but, at that point, the PILT would be, 67,725. So slightly on the positive side for PILT versus, county tax levy. And it's important to note that, and this, I try to make it painfully clear to the townships, that the PILT, apportionment set in statute is 10% of the PILT. And in some of the townships, that is very consistent with their levy. In townships with a higher levy, it falls short of their levy. So we made that real clear, and you know, they went into these decisions knowing that. I want you to know that, so. And that will, those details are in the packet that I'll email, when I leave here today, to Jeff, so you can disperse that. That's a lot of talking, and I'd open it up for questions.
Ted, did you have any people reach out to you on this?
No, I did go to the Lake George meeting. Joe was there. Two of the three board members were there, and they gave their support. They had given support prior to, so basically just updated their prior approval. The sheep ranch in Clay Township, there wasn't a meeting recently on that parcel, but that's been talked about for quite a while.
We did attend the Clay, I'm on the Clay Town Board now, so Kent
Okay.
Wolf, my assistant in Detroit Lakes, attended that meeting and presented,
Okay.
and I abstained from discussion, but and we have a new letter of support from them.
Okay, and I knew they were supportive a couple years ago too, so. And is that moving forward then on its own?
So, good point. That's one of the bullet items here, is that the commissioner to do the best for the state tax dollar wants to do this in one package, one single appraisal. And where that's going is, they gave us permission to separate the Cabacona Creek block and the sheep ranch separate, because those were already starting to move.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that those will move quicker than the rest of this.
Okay, as my understanding, the financing was already, or the,
Yeah,
whatever you wanna call it.
It's complicated, but it was definitely a project en route, and it might open up some additional opportunities to continue the route that we were.
Okay.
Yes.
But as far as like other residents and that, nobody's really reached out to me at all on this. So basically, it's just the township supervisors that I've talked with, and they
So-
were all supportive.
So Tom and I were at the Township Association meetings for Hubbard County, the last one, and I believe it was the township officer from Lake George. He has a problem with the whole, how Hubbard County is managing, because he thinks it's affecting the deer population. So I'm assuming that was when you talked about the pines, that might have been part of his concern. And so he was gonna come to a town board meeting and express his thoughts.
Okay.
He didn't touch at all on the DNR, land acquisition.
I have one question. You know, when the town or the county has timber harvests, and you know the proceeds is kind of divvied up a bit. You know, even townships get a portion of it, I believe. But how does the DNR handle their proceeds from the
Yes.
harvest?
Good question. I can take that if you want, Joe. With the, so, you know, this kind of goes into the story of PILT is kind of tax money too, right? Or I've heard the phrase recycle tax money, paying county taxes as well. The revenues on acquired lands go back into what they call SF.
IA.
Thank you, SFI. We have two very similar acronyms, I get a mix. SFIA account, which helps fund the DNR, and it reduces our general fund budget. So what it basically is, it's allowing us to manage those lands without being a burden on the general fund, and it helps basically pay the PILT, if you will. So not following a direct budget line, the revenues typically would exceed what we're paying in PILT as a, you know, Minnesota taxpayer, and also would probably cover most of our budget. So when you look at these lands, just anecdotally, Potlatch was making money managing the timber aggressively on these lands and paying the taxes. And I think it's an opportunity to do the same. We won't need any additional staff. It's a small uptick. You know, we have 140,000 acres of state land in our area, Park Rapids area. We won't need additional staff or budget to manage these lands, but that revenue will, I think, be well offset, and then you get the benefits of, you know, supporting the forest industry and local recreation based on that even line of timber revenues versus paying PILT.
So do you manage similar to what Potlatch has been doing?
Yes, actually, you know, most of these acres, Potlatch divested of their lower profitability lands in terms of a timber manager, right? So the stuff that we are getting here, in the same thing on the county side, is the most productive lands that they had. They saved the best pinery till the end. And our rotation age is very similar to Potlatch's. We run, depending on the productivity of the site, we run either a 60 or a 70-year rotation on pine. So we'll thin those stands 4 times over their life cycle, final harvest and replant.
So Mike, can you summarize, you kind of have a little bit here, but for those that are listening that may not be up to speed on this, the general purpose seems to be to, while you're acquiring it, it seems to be to continue what the Conservation Fund has been doing in managing the lands. Do you have any other intended uses for any of it?
For when it becomes state forest land?
Yep.
Yeah, so it would be, it'd be very similar. You know, their mission is to move it into a working forest, is a term that we use. It's forestry speak for, you know, producing fiber, conserving natural resources, and, you know, multiple use management, where you're gonna have, you know, hunting and motorized, non-motorized, all sorts of recreation, basically trying to make it economically feasible timber management. Because if you get deep into the spirituality of forestry, it is, you know, you look the world around in world history, if forests are not profitable, they go away. You know, they go away to some other land use. So we need to make them profitable and benefit in many ways. So that's kind of their mission, and it fits very well with county and state land management. So yes, we will continue to manage them for timber. They'll be open for motorized, non-motorized rec. A lot of these land holdings where they're smaller blocks won't produce a lot of opportunities for rec trails, because they're just simply, you know, they don't interconnect with anything. But many of them do. The majority of these acres are interconnected. As you know, with the sheep ranch, it kind of locks in around your project at Deep Lake and that, so. Does that get to where you were going? Okay.
Has the Conservation Fund put any conservation easements on any of these parcels?
Not that I'm aware of, and I don't want to speak for them. My understanding is that a conservation easement carries with it, you know, some management costs that the Conservation Fund as an organization hasn't really set themselves up to manage. So the likelihood of that is low, that these will, well, the state will not accept them with any strings attached. They need to be free and clear to manage like our state forest lands. So when we acquire them, they won't have any conservation easements. How they divest of any leftovers and how that looks, I can't speak to, but I'm skeptical that it will go with any conservation easements.
Okay. I know that Potlatch had, I believe it was over 10,000 acres in Hubbard County. We're talking about almost 6,000. Does the DNR have any plans to acquire more of
No.
the Conservation Fund land?
This is the end result of a holistic view that started with, you know, tying in with CHIP and looking at, you know, these are interlocked with county lands. Some of that 10,300 you have already acquired. And the remaining parcels are, you know, either scattered or, you know, totally disjointed and have of low value. So Joe and I were a part of a team that looked at, you know, we had ecologists and wildlife biologists where we looked for all divisions of the DNR's benefits. And these are the lands that we identified.
Okay. And then I guess the last question I have is, does the DNR looking at selling any of their holdings in Hubbard County?
Yeah, so we have talked about that in the past. Right now, in Hubbard County, we don't have our portfolio is pretty well refined. We do have a few parcels that are, I mean, a very few, like less than a handful that are isolated, no access, which are basically the low-hanging fruit for sure. In those cases, they're school trust lands, which is more difficult to sell. And they're in scenarios where we still can profitably, the school trust interest is primary profit. And we can still manage those profitably because we have, consensual access from the neighboring landowners. So with that, the Office of School Trust wants to retain those. The remainder typically fall in large blocks that are, high-value management and high-value conservation lands that, I'm speaking for the Park Rapids area. Do you have any plans?
No, we don't have anything identified at this time that we'd be looking at selling.
And certainly not any to the offset quantity here. Those opportunities do come up, there are a few even trust lands that, there's one within a mile of us here on the edge of town that, is gonna be a handful to manage, that is state land that we need to look for other options for someday probably, but, at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions?
So, and we can go back to questions again. The objective for me here today is to get your feedback if we have or if we can, and then to hear the board's opinion. And we have, if the board is willing to share an opinion one way or another, and if it's an opinion of support, that would be good for our funding. Part of this is to show that we have vetted the process through the community. And we would ask for that of the board if they're supportive of it.
I guess overall, I'm in support of this. I would still like to see the DNR to divest of some of its property. I know that we're getting pilt for these lands, and by the figures here, you're showing that it's, we're actually gaining a little bit. I don't know about today's values and stuff like that, how this works out, but, we're in the ballpark here. The only point I have is that these lands are now protected and everything, but also we've taken away parcels that could be developed. Somebody could put a cabin or a campsite or a residential home or something like that on them. So that kind of concerns me, but otherwise I would be in support of this. And how does our board feel?
I like it that Mike said that when forest lands is not profitable, it'll go away. So I like it that you're going to still look at it as supplying fiber and wood for our local industries, because those jobs are important to Hubbard County.
So would you say the board's consensus is approval of this?
I think so.
Alrighty.
So I would ask, Mike, would you have a draft letter of support that you could get to me with that packet?
I have a rough template if you want to use that or alter it, and I can email it to you.
If you email me, email that with the materials, I can present that letter to the board on the 20th, and they can formally approve it at that point in time.
That sounds great. Thank you, Jeff.
I would probably add that the boards would be in support of the township's support, and then generally on behalf of the county as well. It'd probably be how I would identify that, whether that's how it's written in his draft or not. I'd probably identify support of the township
Yes.
boards as well.
Okay. And if any feedback on that process, I felt good about it and hope the board does, but if you have any feedback on how we did that, then let us know.
One last question. So, even if you were against this, being the fact that the Conservation Fund purchased much of the land, they're not going to sell it to another entity that probably is not going to continue on doing what they were doing. So it's somewhat a mute conversation a lot of times. I think that's the frustration of some of us sometime. That's not on you guys or anything like that. That's just, it's a perfectly rational end around.
Yeah, I understand. There will be, albeit a small amount of those 10,300 acres that won't make it into public, lands. But I do believe the best they can hope for is a good faith conservation buyer. They're not probably gonna put a conservation easement on it. So there is a chance for several things to happen, but I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, and it just reiterates the concern some of us have for where we end up long-term. If these kind of things continue to happen and happen and happen, where are we gonna be 40, 50 years from now?
Yeah.
I'd prefer to still see Potlatch be the owner of these lands.
Oh, you're
That's
right.
the way it is.
Yeah.
Also, when an organization like that comes in and purchases, the private person can't match what they're paying, and so there needs to be a mix, and it's taking the private buyer out.
So there's one benefit that we've discussed about the contiguity of public lands, right, in the places where it makes sense for them to be aggregated in that area. And then identify those places that are developable, that are already close to infrastructure. And we've added additional county lands to the sale for 2023 for the plan, and we're gonna continue to identify those parcels that make the most sense for development. Because if somebody buys something in the middle of 1,000 acres of public lands and then wants a road to it, I mean, that's really disruptive. And it can be really costly
That's a good point,
on
Jim.
the local resources. So we've had a lot of conversations about these things generally, and specifically for 2023, Chip has added revenue to his budget by identifying additional parcels to make available for sale for next year. And I know that periodically the state would do similar things if they end up holding a parcel that's not contiguous with something else that makes better sense other places. So I participated in land swaps between the DNR and the local county before. So in that sense, when we aggregate those things in a way where we don't have to worry about any infrastructure development, we don't have to worry about private ownership needing infrastructure to access their parcels, it makes a lot of sense. And then we really did identify a significant number of parcels that the county owns that would make better sense for development that far exceed the current demand for those parcels right now. So I think we can try to make a little bit more available than there is demand for, so that we know we're not making it available, and we can do that for a good term into the future, right, Jim?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. In light of what they just talked about, I took down a few items here that, when we look at acquiring lands, some of the things that we look at is improved management efficiencies. If you have a parcel that's totally surrounded by public lands, or that's surrounded by tax forfeited lands, if we acquire that parcel, that's, could be, a lot of property line running that we don't have to do anymore, so that, anything that would improve our management efficiencies. Another thing that we look at is securing public access. If we've got parcels that we cannot get the public to because it's landlocked, if we can acquire lands that would provide that legal access for the public to get to, those are parcels that we look at. And that's probably one of our top priorities. Lands that protect critical habitat. If we've got, habitat that is severely lacking, and that is critical for, certain species, we'll look at that. And then reducing potential tax liabilities, as Jeff mentioned, if you've got a private 40 out in the middle of nowhere, and a guy wants a public road or a road to it, that's a tax liability, either to township or the county or whomever, that you know, your property taxes are not gonna cover the cost of installing that road or maintaining that road. So we look at that. And then we also, of course, look at, you know, income potential and, you know, climate change, carbon sequestration. If it's a very high-quality parcel of land that we can grow a lot of timber on and manage well, you know, those are all benefits that will continue on into the future. So just some thoughts that, you know, that we look at when we're doing this, so. On the agenda item, 6B, we pulled that from today's agenda. We're going to be bringing that back in January. Item 6C, letter of support for the 2023 Headwaters 200 Snowmobile Race to be held January 28th and 29th. This again is a snowmobile race that, providing we have enough snow, will be through the woods north of Park Rapids and over into the Nevis area, and brings in a number of racers and spectators, and they are looking for a letter of support from the county board. There is a draft letter of support in your packet. I did talk with both the Two Inlets Forest Riders Snowmobile Club and the Nevis Snowmobile Club as to their position on whether they are in favor of these races. And while neither club has had a chance to officially meet to have a club meeting decision on this, both the chairmans that I've talked to were in favor of continuing the race. They feel that it's good for the business, it's good for bringing people to the area, it's advertising, and it's good for the snowmobiling industry. So they are in favor of support for the snowmobile race.
Thank you. I think, like you were saying, it's a good thing for the area here, brings in some economic bump here for that weekend. Hopefully there's snow. I see it's in January, so fingers crossed. The board have any comments? Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Item 6D is acknowledgement of legal access from Hubbard County to a scientific and natural area that's located near Little Mantrap Lake. Actually, it's in Becker County, but a portion of the legal access is in Hubbard County. I was a little taken aback when this came across my desk. It made it sound like they wanted the county to grant an easement across private lands into Becker County. And in looking at the parcel map, I said, well, you know, that's not even county land. County board can't issue an easement across that. This is just that you're acknowledging that the DNR has secured legal access to this parcel, and a portion of it is through Hubbard County. It is across private land, but it does access land that they've acquired in Becker County for a scientific and natural area.
Why would they even need our acknowledgement for it?
You know, I think what I understand is that the legislature has required that when the DNR acquires these parcels, that they also make sure that they acquire legal access to it, so you don't have landlocked parcels that the public can't get to. And so they wanted to make sure that the counties are aware that when they buy these, acquire these parcels, that there is also legal access to them as well. So that's why they were requesting that we pass a resolution acknowledging that there's legal access to this property.
Then I'm assuming there's no access in Becker County to this parcel.
No, they have to come through Hubbard County to get to it.
I think it's an attempt to avoid the perceived runaround county boards to acquire these things and not have a public conversation about them. There really isn't anything to do other than to recognize that that access has been acquired and that access happened in Hubbard County. It's just, I don't think anything's tied to it other than they've put that additional step in. I've seen this with SNAs a couple of times. Just so that the DNR and the legislature know that you've seen it.
So we're looking at approximately 320 feet in Hubbard County. Now on the map, the yellow trail that is already there, is that through county land or is that also in private land?
That's a township road.
Okay.
It's just that last blue section in Hubbard County that is into private land.
Okay.
And then it goes into Becker County.
Guess we can acknowledge we heard this.
I think that's all they're asking. They came to my desk and I said, that's for Chip to think about, so.
If there's any further questions? Thank you.
You gotta
Well,
pass a
that's a
motion for the resolution.
Oh, okay. Then is there I see approved resolution, excuse me. Can I get a motion for approval then?
I'll move.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chip. Solid waste.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so the first item I have for you today is to review and approve quotes for the 2023 scrap metal recycling contract. Every year, we go through and solicit proposals for several contracts of the material that we recycle out of the transfer stations. This includes things like tires, electronics, scrap metal, batteries, and fluorescent tubes. Some of these contracts get put on a 2-year contract, so and some are currently now on the state bid contract, so we don't see them all every year. But this one in particular is for our scrap metal recycling. And in 2023, we received one quote for this recycling of this material from Crowing Recycling out of Brainerd. And it includes appliances, car batteries, propane cylinders, and scrap metal collected at both transfer stations. In 2021, we recycled approximately 1,535 tons of scrap metal and appliances and 10.4 tons of batteries from our transfer stations. Crowing was the only quote that, like I mentioned, that we'd received. We do send it out to several scrap metal contractors throughout the state and then also publish it in the county papers as well. So my recommendation would be to approve the scrap metal and appliance recycling quote from Crowing Recycling of Brainerd for 2023. Their price was $61 per ton for scrap metal and appliances, 10 cents a pound for batteries, and there'd be no charge for propane tanks. We have used Crowing for many, many years. They provide a good service for us, and we have a good system set up to deal with these. The one thing I would note, though, is also that our price last year this year, 2022, was $101 a ton, and next year it will be going to $61 a ton, and that's a reflection of kind of where the recycling markets were at. And prior to 2022, we were at $61 a ton, so it's not ideal to have to go down that much, but that's where we're at, so.
Any idea why we only get one quote?
Like I said, I don't know, we reach out directly to some of the area, closer town, the scrap yards and area towns, and I don't know if it's just our volume where they don't have the, equipment to handle our volume. A lot of these places might also use crowing as an end market, so that might create some issues, but every year we try to poke and prod and get some more quotes, but that's just what we end up with, so.
And I'm guessing with the cost of fuel and everything else going up, that they're probably looking at their margins. If they've got to pay X number of dollars and then go to Crow Wing, if they're the closest one, the money just might not be there.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Shar.
I'll second that.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion?
Do they pay for that 10 cents a pound for all batteries, or it's just specific batteries?
It's just car battery, automotive
Our
batteries, yeah.
So, okay, what happens with the other batteries?
All our rechargeable batteries, and that's another good point, that people can't just throw any rechargeable button batteries or whatever in their trash. We take them at the household hazardous waste areas at the transfer stations. And there's a program called Call to Recycle. It's kind of a national program where they send you all the materials that you need to collect these. You package them up and ship them out, and they recycle those. So, and that doesn't cost us anything. It's just a kind of program. They provide all the supplies, and many counties in the state and around the country use them. So.
That would be my next question. Okay, so no cost for disposing those. Okay.
So how about, like flashlight batteries? You just throw those in the trash?
Historically, the alkaline batteries, we've told people just to throw them in their regular garbage. That's a proper location for them, but I think, and I guess I'll get into that a little bit more later, but we might start encouraging people just to bring all them batteries into their HHW areas as well, just so we can better handle them and make sure we don't end up with them rechargeable batteries in our regular garbage or at the transfer stations, because them are the ones that can cause fires. So we might, right now, yes, but we might change that here, looking at how to best handle them in the future, so.
Well, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, so the next agenda item is for our recycling of electronics. So we have to review and approve quotes for 2023 electronics recycling. We received 4 quotes for electronics recycling for 2023. And to compare the quotes, I utilized the data that we have from the previous state fiscal year, which is from June 2022 through July 2023. I'm sorry, that's not correct. I think it was actually from July 2021 through June of 2022. So we use that to kind of get how much material we've shipped over that time, break it out to what our costs are for each material, and look at our transportation costs. And that kind of gives me a total cost estimate to what each county or each company would be able to provide that service for. So taking that into account, we had 4 quotes: Dynamic Life Cycle Innovations, Universal Recycling Technologies, Retrofit Environmental, and TC Lighting and Supplies and Recycling. The low quote for 2023 is with Dynamic Life Cycle Innovations out of Onalaska, Wisconsin. And you can see my total estimated cost by selecting them would be $39,140.11 based on our material that we had processed over the last year. Previously, and for many years prior, we've went with URT, or Universal Recycling Technologies, but the big thing with that is the transportation costs for this material and what we had to pay for shipping has continued to climb. And that's quite a bit further into Wisconsin where we'd have to process those, and that made their price higher than what Dynamic would be. So my recommendation for 2023 is that we utilize Dynamic Life Cycle Innovations for our electronic waste recycling.
How often are they picking up?
Let's see, I think we had 14. I think when I put this together, hold on a second, got it right here. Yeah, 14 loads about 14 loads a year, so slightly over once a month.
Well, one thing that I'm a little bit confused on is, you have down there that comes out of, 391-6307. But that's, when I look at it in the budget, that's a building maintenance item. Is that the wrong number for it?
I guess I'm not,
I show here account number 52.
it says 6343, I believe.
Oh, 6343.
Yep, 392. So this we utilize, and I guess I don't have that, it'd come out of our score grant funding is kind of where we
I got the wrong one.
reflect
Okay.
a lot of these costs, so.
217C.
My mistake. Yep.
I'll move to approve the low quote.
Thank you, David. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, so the next item I have is to review and approve quote for electrical work at the North Transfer Station. We have our fabric building that was installed recently at the North Transfer Station, and now we're looking at installing lights inside of that building and getting some security lights around it, and also installing a couple outlets in there. So we went out and received 2 quotes to do this work, with the low quote being from Bergstrom Electric of Park Rapids, for $9,285, and that would be my recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Shar.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom.
That's the one from 63.
So I figured.
When I drove down here this morning, I wish I would have had time to swing in there because the building looks impressive from the road.
Yeah, it changes the landscape going in there.
Yeah, I wonder about, like I said, I wanted to check it out because I'm wondering if a big gust of wind comes, how secure that thing is. And
Well, this company, installs them all over the country and has engineer drawings, so I'm hoping it'll be good, so. I think the lifespan was or warranty was about 20 years on the fabric building, so.
Okay, good. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, the next agenda item I have is to review and approve our 2023 solid waste assessment. I included quite a bit of information in the background information in the packet. I'll probably highlight some of them sections here and then get into the worksheet that shows the proposed costs. So if you remember back at the September work session, I had proposed to increase the residential assessment 19% from $158 to up to $188, and commercial assessments were proposed to increase 14%, with the minimum assessment going from $212 up to $242. For 2023, we have a culmination of several things that are going to increase our expenditures. As I've discussed previously, Polk County will be increasing tipping fees by an additional $5 up to $80 per ton. And the hauling contract for our waste hauling is also increasing 13% in 2023. And we factor that in also with accounting for the higher fuel prices and supply and market demand for a lot of our other material, repair materials and equipment costs going up as well. There will be major expenses that we've also previously discussed that will be coming up in 2023 and within the next 10 years due to covering and closing one or both of the demolition landfills. And we're looking at a large capital project in 2023 for phase 1 covering of the south landfill. And we also need to be budgeting annually to be able to plan for the future closing costs. Our original budget proposal had reflected a $800,000 capital project for that cover project that we are planning to complete in 2023. And we had originally planned for that to be funded outside of the solid waste assessment. We had applied for using the American Rescue Plan funds to do that work. At that time, the cost was estimated to be around $563,000. And again, this work is part of our corrective action plan from the MPCA in our permit to address groundwater issues at the facility. And we had also hoped to utilize capital dollars resulting from the increased tax capacity generated from the pipeline project. And since those funding sources no longer seem viable, we're looking at having to account for these costs through the solid waste assessment. So that brings me to the updated proposed assessment for 2023 that I'm recommending today. Since the work session in September, we've had additional costs that we need to account for in 2023, and that's resulting from the completion of the labor and insurance contracts. We're looking at needing to increase the assessment more than originally anticipated to cover expenses. It is looking like we're also going to have to account for this landfill cover capital project, and we have set aside additional capital funds to pay for this project over 3 to 4 years. The funds would initially be borrowed, as the plan would be the funds would initially be borrowed from the general fund or other sources. You know, in my opinion, I want to just point this out to the board as well, is that, you know, I feel the board should still consider using increased tax capacity from the pipeline project for this initial capital project, even if it is spread out over 3 to 4 years. But again, that would be, you know, the board's decision, and I know you need to balance this project with the other needs in the county as well. So taking all this into account, we're proposing now to increase the residential assessment 27% in 2023 from $158 up to $200. And we're proposing to increase the commercial assessment by 18%. So the minimum commercial assessment would go from $212 up to $250 and up based on the volume of waste generated. So the first worksheet there just is a worksheet of what the 2023 assessment would be as proposed. So you can see the residential assessment would be going up to $200. And the other main one is commercial one would be going up to $250 and up, and all the rest of them just fall in line with that same formula that they've been at in previous years. So, and the next worksheet shows a little bit more of the history going back to 2019. So you can see if you go over the top right of the worksheet there, again, 2023, we're proposing a $200 residential assessment. And looking back, 2022 for this current year is $158. 2021 was $153. 2020 was $149. 2019 was $157. And we also had a lower rate at that time for the seasonal properties. If you remember, we had combined them moving forward starting in 2020. So I guess that's kind of the, you know, the information I'll present, and we can discuss and answer any questions you guys might have. So
Back in September, when it was 188, I think you had, what, your total revenue in forecast of 3,950,000. So if it were at 200, what would be your forecast now?
sorry, what did you have for the revenue back then?
3,950,000, and I, you know, maybe make sure I got that off the right line. That was, fund number 3915051.
Okay. Yeah, with this, the special assessment revenue funding there would be, with this proposed to be $4,284,725.
And I'll get you an updated IFS breakout of all of the, ahead of the next meeting, so you'll have that to look at.
So I have two thoughts. One is, if you recall, they had asked us to give some of the ARPA funds towards what the needed work, and we had to take the ARPA funds to shore up heritage. And so now we have to find a different way to fund this. And even though this is a large percentage of increase per household, at $200 a year, this is still one of the best deals around. If you know, I've told you this before, I know of somebody that took one trailer load to Becker County, and one trailer load was $200. And so this past year, my husband and I have done extensive work on a lot, and now we're starting a remodeling project. If anybody uses this at all beyond just their daily, you know, garbage, they can't go to another county for $200 if they live there and do this. So even though this is a large increase, I do support it, because we have to. This is an example of what we're trying to do, even when you look at the levy this year. Part of the percentage of the increase is things that we haven't accounted for before in the levy. And in past years, we haven't been meeting the expenses. They've been using other funds, and so this has to become self-sufficient.
That's kind of where I come down on it. It was originally established to be an enterprise fund and support itself through the special assessments. If we're constantly using regular levy dollars to, take care of capital projects or stuff for an enterprise fund, is that the proper way to be doing it? I'm not so sure it is. I appreciate Josh's position on, trying to find ways to find capital for this
Yes.
project, because it has to be done. There's no doubt about that. But we, as a board, made a commitment regarding those Enbridge funds on how we would like to see them used. And right out of the gate, if we're gonna expend every bit of that, we start doing that every year, what's the point?
Well, then I can say that I disagree. And I brought this up at the general government meeting. I think about the County Board of Adjustment and Equalization, how we had well over 100 people talking about their values going up. The Truth in Taxation meeting we just had last week, the number of people that were there concerned about their taxes going up. We've got this time in our history here where inflation is at record highs. Heating oil and LP prices are way up there too. And now we're just adding one more thing to our property taxpayers in the county. I know with the increased Enbridge funds that we are getting, that we talked about 1/3 and 1/3 and 1/3. Hopefully those dollars will be coming in for quite a number of years. And I know that we've already used some of them in other departments to help those, keep those budgets down so that they're not on the general levy. And like I say, I can't see where we can't pull some money from those excess Enbridge funds to cover something like this, to help, like I say, especially at this time in our history when everything's going sky high with prices and stuff like that.
Ted, would you be in support of what was proposed in September at the 188?
I guess at some point we have to raise them, and I guess I would be supportive of that. And who knows, maybe next year we look at our levy increase and it won't be, I sure hope it's not gonna be what we were looking at this year. And we can incrementally raise the assessments. I do believe it is something, like you say, that's why we have this assessment, is to take care of our garbage and other programs that are paid for with this. It's just that, like I say, just one more thing one more layer of a bill for, and and I've made this comment at the Truth and Taxation meeting, not everybody got a raise in Hubbard County, and some people are on fixed incomes. Some people maybe even took a wage decrease or whatever for this next year, and when we just keep adding to the burden, and like I say, so I'd like to try to work something else out, but, and I know, like I say, at some point we should have this to the point where it is self-sufficient. This $800,000 to cover the landfills, that's kind of something that you don't plan for, that you're gonna need to do this to help with the groundwater issues we're having. But that's, I just wanted to throw that out there, and I hope, yeah, if we could work something else out for now, I would appreciate that.
But we do know that we're gonna have those continued expenses with this enterprise fund. And aside from healthcare, nothing's going up faster than the cost of solid waste management. So if we make the recommended increase this year, we should be able to hold those increases to less than 10% annually going forward if we're just looking as far as we can see. If we hold it at the 14%, you're gonna be looking at 14, 15% each of the next 3 years to get to the same place 3 years from now. And in all honesty, the difference between $158 and $200 a year is $3.25 a month. So this is the one place where I think it makes the most sense to do this. But you certainly can, if you wanna go 15, 15, 15 over 3 years, or you wanna go with this big bump and then 10 and 10, you end up in the same place in 3 years. And as Josh talked about, hoping we can use general fund or using capital fund to cover the cost of the improvement in 2023 and then pay about $150,000. This proposal allows us to pay $150,000 of that project out of current operating, out of the fees, and then $150,000 a year for 2 or 3 years to cover the balance of that. So whether those funds come from the general fund or they come from the capital fund really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which county pocket it comes from, it's coming from the same fund balance. It would qualify the capital monies, Kay is setting up as a dedicated fund so that they can only be used for capital and not general operating expenses. These expenses could come out of either pocket, and they're still coming out of the same bucket, if that makes any amount of sense. So if you want to modify what's proposed here, with truth be told, the operating amount proposed in September did not cover the wage increases of the implementation of the new classification system. This jump covers both that operating change and helps to pay for that, the landfill cover over 4 years.
For me, again, it comes down to a policy discussion on how you're gonna handle your enterprise funds. Are we gonna treat one enterprise fund different than another enterprise fund? We have 2 of them in this county. Are we gonna use capital money from the Enbridge tax capacity that was captured and use it to subsidize the other enterprise fund that we have? Position of the board has basically been no on that.
Mr. Chair, may I stick in my 2 cents? Sure. Okay, back in September, when you proposed the 188, that one I was just barely for, so, but I was for it. But now you've kind of tipped the balance, in my opinion. And I did a little math on what's the average, people who are on fixed income, maybe Social Security and maybe a little bit more, they're getting an 8.7% increase. This increase from 157 to 200, that'll eat up about 3% of their increase. It's just in, your garbage assessment alone. And then they got all the other things they gotta pay for, more gas, more with property taxes. We already increased a lot for that. I think we're kind of sticking a little bit too much at one time to our taxpayers. We gotta spread this out if we can. I'm looking at the capital improvement plan. I think in the sheriff's department, they did 400,000 for radios. I think it was Scott who said that they can spread that out a little bit. So that would give us some money for next year if we can take some of that.
The updated capital plan that we reviewed at the last general government meeting, we are spreading the radios over 3 years. And the intent was to spend about 1/3 in current capital projects, 1/3 in economic development projects, and set 1/3 aside. So that was the last directive that we had, and that's what was reviewed at general government. You'll get copies of that again for next meeting. But that was the only way to do it in a way that allows us to set any money aside rather than burning through it all as current capital needs.
I just have a problem with too much at one time. And we saw it expressed last Thursday evening. And I've had quite a few calls on it too, and emails. We need, of course we need the money, but do we have to get it all at one time? Can we spread it out some more? Are there things that can be cut to make up for it? Or do you really need the 800,000 in 2023? Or can that be spread out some? That's where I'm looking at it from.
Yeah, I guess with the capital project, you know, it is something resulting from our 2018, 2019 permit. And those doing this phase one of the landfill, I think, is very important to get done this next building season. And again, this isn't paying for that entire project through this assessment, it's paying it back over 3 to 4 years. So I think and our other cost increases are really a result of, you know, the cost of disposing of waste is going up, and it's kind of out of, you know, our control. You know, we have to pay for these costs of the waste that's being generated in the county, so, I guess it's just, you know, kind of looking at where the funds are gonna be coming from and how we pay them back, but I do think it's important to plan to do this project next year, because these costs are just gonna keep increasing. It's just where do we get that funding from and how do we pay them back, so.
I think from my own perspective, if I were to go and approve this, I know next year when we're working on the 2024 budget, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna say no to every addition of people on the staff, because we're going a little bit too far with our increases for this year.
But how did you come up with a 3% off of Social Security? I just took $1,000, I took it times 3, so that's $30 a month. But this increase would be $5 a month.
The average person will get maybe about $135
Oh, so you
a
took
year.
it that way, okay,
a year increase.
okay, thank you.
Or a month increase, month increase. And it came out to 3%.
Well, we can shift it over 3 years, but the bottom line is whether we take the money, whether we designate it here or whether we take it out of the levy. The money still has to come because we still have to pay for it.
If we leave it at 188, we are gonna be using fund balance for operating costs and not even addressing the capital project.
And that's part of the reason we're at where we're at with the levy is because we've been using fund balances in past years.
Well, I know if I approve this, or if this gets my vote, I'm gonna be watching really closely every request coming for the 2024 budget. And that needs to be really kept in check over what we did for 2023.
I'm also gonna have a projection for 24 and 25 before I ask you to approve the levy next week. I'm working on that as well. And as we talked at our last meeting, I think if we capture new tax capacity in 3 to 4%, we should be in good shape for the next 2 years. If we back off now in any one of these things, then we're gonna have 3 years of rolling increases as opposed to one adjustment at this time when it makes sense. But I will have those numbers for you and show you how that works out in 24 and 25.
So just procedurally, so I understand this, you're asking us to review and approve this to be presented at the public hearing next week, is that correct?
No, this is to approve the assessment. Next week at the public hearing, we'll have our fee
Oh,
schedule.
that's right, that's a fee schedule. Yeah, thank you.
This one's always set separately
Yeah.
from the levy.
No matter how you slice this up, I mean, you take the medicine up front, or you take the medicine over multiple years. Administrator Cadwell said, you gotta pay for it either way.
And I know we talked about splitting the fund in thirds. But we can't lock ourselves in, and we can't lock in future boards to have that set in stone, that there's gotta be some flexibility. Perhaps maybe a couple years from now, we don't use as much on capital needs, and we have stuff left over that goes into future needs, stuff like that. But if we can't be flexible, then
The concern I have with extending it out too far is the time value of money. You're actually gonna end up raising more. Because instead of taking 3 years to pay back those project costs, it's now gonna take you 5 or 6 years to pay back those project costs that we're borrowing from ourselves. it's gonna end up costing a little more.
So procedurally, there's an annual review built in for the board relative to a capital planning budget. This year, we're not approving a capital plan. We haven't gone through the process. We haven't held a public hearing. We are designating the use of some of those funds in our 2023 budget and designating some of those funds to remain in fund balance for 2023. In second quarter, probably, of 2023, we will bring a capital plan to you and the public to review, and that will have a 5-year operating capital plan like our highway department does, but it also requires an annual adjustment and annual approval of that 5-year plan, right? So that we are making adjustments as we go along, so that you will always have the opportunity to look at that, and we're not setting 1/3 now forever. We're setting that now for 2023 was the recommendation that I've been building this off of. And then every year you'll have an opportunity to affirm that. If we get to a point where we don't need economic development funds and we can put some more money aside for capital, or we have current capital needs that we have to spend, you will have every year an opportunity to reallocate that. But that procedurally, that's where we're at with this process. We have not approved a capital plan because we have not held a public hearing. So what we're looking at is we're looking at the use of those funds in next year's operating and capital budget. And then we'll approve that capital plan, and then every year you'll have to approve that capital plan with the subsequent 5-year plan, tentative 5-year plan with it. And things always adjust, right? We may end up adjusting the highway department plan for 2023 if things go completely out of whack, right? If bids come in too high, or material costs go up higher than we thought they would, or revenues from the state decrease from where we thought we were, we have to make adjustments as we get more information as well.
This also underscores to me the importance of having a capital plan.
Yes.
Because without it, this exercise that we're doing right now, you're seeing, it's way too easy just to take the path of least resistance and gobble it all up. And then that potentially puts you in a bad position in the future. It's the pressure to just take the easy path is easy.
But the pressure on, the easy path for government is always up, increase the fees, increase the taxes, and, they can easily get away with it. When you're a private business, well, you gotta still get people to pay for that, your increase.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Tom. The reality, though, this is what it costs to run this service in this county.
And people have come to expect this level of service in the county, so if we're not gonna then fund it, what are we gonna give up for service?
Mhm.
So, for that sake, I'm gonna move to approve this.
I'll second. And the other part, I've had discussions with a couple tech, just had one last night with them and kind of went over exactly what we'd be discussing today with this. And I have yet to meet a taxpayer that doesn't think that what we provide out there and what Josh does out there at the transfer station is second to none. They couldn't be happier to be able to simply go out and take their load of garbage out there, or demolition from the remodel project. They can't believe it. I told the one guy, if your fee goes up $40, would that upset you? He said, no. I've never seen anything like this. So, it's what it costs.
Well, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Well, can we back up? I was still thinking.
So that was that 2-2?
Tom hasn't voted yet.
Yeah, I haven't voted. Well, like I said, I'd vote for it, but I'm going to be watching the 2024 proposed increase very closely. So my vote is for yes for it.
Okay. So the motion passed 3-1.
All right. I have one more item. I just wanted to, it's not on the agenda, but I wanted to highlight, or mention. Last Tuesday, we did have another fire at the transfer station in Park Rapids, excuse me. So last Tuesday night, we had a fire at the South Transfer Station. The fire was contained to a bagged garbage dumpster in the express lane of the building. The fire alarm system notified staff and emergency personnel around 2:45 a.m., and the Park Rapids Fire Department and police departments responded. The fire was not hot enough to deploy any of the sprinklers, and there doesn't appear to be any structural damage, mainly smoke or soot along one section of the wall. We're working with MCIT and meeting with an adjuster this afternoon to see what cleanup costs we'll have from that. But the initial reports indicate that the fire may have been caused by a resident placing ashes in the dumpster earlier in the day. So, you know, that's the second fire we've had at the transfer station this year. And with this last one with ashes, we're gonna be working with, our Green Corps member to get some articles out in the paper to help highlight the ways to properly dispose of ashes. And the other thing we discussed is, again, adding on how to properly dispose of rechargeable batteries, because that's, again, one of the leading cause of fires throughout waste management facilities. But, again, we were pretty lucky, I think, for what had happened, but it's one of the things we need to constantly be working on and finding solutions to as well, because this risk just seems like it keeps increasing at solid waste facilities, so.
So Josh, this last week I found out that there was a freezer out there and it's filling up with nails. I'd never noticed that before. So do you sell those? Is that part of the scrap metal? What happens to the nails?
Yeah, we've just used, you know, at the end of each one of the, the end of each one of the express lanes in the building, we normally have a freezer or two out there to collect small pieces of scrap metal. So they get shipped out with Crowing Recycling, since they take appliances and scrap metal. But it's just a way to help keep them
contain it,
containerized so they're not spread out over the facility, so.
I thought that was interesting.
Do you have something like that at the North Transfer Station?
No, not really.
Because I think about sometimes when I take scrap metal, the small pieces that I collect, I normally have in a 5-gallon pail. And sometimes I'll leave the 5-gallon pail there because it's metal, but sometimes I just dump it. But I try to dump it like in a washing machine or something so that I'm not scattering nails and other small pieces of steel in an area where people back their vehicles in to throw away their steel. So I know I've gotten a flat tire or two in my past, and I don't know where the nails come from, but it could come from anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do have magnets at both facilities where we're driving the roads periodically to try to pick all that stuff up too, so.
Alrighty.
All right, thank you.
Social services.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the agenda item report that I have today is just the renewal of the North Country Community Health joint powers for the next 2 years. The Commissioner Van Kempen and myself sit on this, although I think Commissioner Van Kempen's attended a few more than I have. It always seems to fall on a crazy day when I'm not available. But so this is just I'm just seeking your approval for that. The appointments again will come after the first of the year, during that first meeting when we do committee. When the board does committee appointments and such, so.
And I know I reached out to April. I don't know if you did or not.
I have not. I was gonna wait until we got this. Did she reply?
Yes, she
Okay,
would like to continue to serve.
perfect.
So, and she's been a good addition.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll thank Shar for that contact information there.
April's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I'll vote to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Sheriff's Department. Good morning.
Good morning. The only item I have is request review and approval of the agreement, the healthcare agreement, excuse me, with Advanced Correctional Healthcare. This, our current provider is Mend Medical, and as you know, we do provide medical services in our jail for inmates, and whether you have 10 inmates or 110, that is a service that we do need to provide. The contract with the new outfit of ACH would start February 28th. Our current amount that we're paying Mend is $15,816 a month. ACH is $18,989 a month, so it's roughly $3,000 a month in addition. We did budget for the higher amount for our jail budget for next year. This is one of those necessary evils, but it's something that we can't go without, so we're requesting approval of that at this time.
Or does the nurse come from this organization that you have?
Well, they try to hire local nurses.
Okay, but they're funded through this?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. So if there was more than one nurse, then the
They pay
per
for
month
it.
would have, they pay
Yes.
for it?
Yes.
But eventually, our monthly rate might be adjusted if our service needs
It could be,
increased. Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is for so many hours a month or a week of nursing. I believe it's 40 hours a week of nursing, so much for actual doctor, so much for psychological stuff. So, yeah.
What do you do when there's not a nurse there?
Well, then they're not making any sick calls.
No, I'm
you know.
talking, okay, so if an inmate gets ill, then are they just automatically sent to ER if
Yep,
the
it
nurse
depends.
is not there?
Yeah, it depends how bad it is. If it's something that needs, immediate assistance, yeah, then they would go to the emergency room. But when a nurse comes in, they basically take sick calls, inmates that have issues.
Okay.
There's a whole series of different inmates with different issues, and they tend to them, one at a time right down the line. And they do that every day. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Corey, didn't we just, in the last few months, increase the amount of time that Mend was gonna be showing up?
We did. Yes.
That's what I was remembering. It's like, didn't we just do this?
Yep, we did it with the existing company, but now that company actually is going out of business.
Okay.
So we
Need
had to
somebody.
find, somebody else. And we checked other pricing, I attempted to get a price locally with Essentia to see if they would be interested in contracting with us, but I've been waiting for months for a response, and I get nothing. And this is a very reputable healthcare outfit that is across the nation, and so I truly feel that they'll do a good job. So the contract was approved by the county attorney. He did review it, and it's certainly something that we can live with. So
Corey, does it account for the increased census? I mean, are they gonna be there more often, more hours because of the?
yes, yep. We provided them with how many inmates we have, and then they price accordingly. Absolutely.
All right. There's no further questions. Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Shar. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, unless the board had something else, so. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Finance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bag full of money.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Before you, we have approval to open an investment account with Ellers. Well, actually, it's Pershing Advisor Solutions, who would be managed by Ellers Investments. If I said that right, they would be the investment advisor.
So this is something that we talked about when we brought in financial advisement companies, helping manage the county's investment portfolio is something that we knew we could use some help with. We know for the last 2 years, our investment income has been really lousy with the markets the way they were. The markets are changing. So Kay's proposal here is that we would convert some of the current cash assets into a ladder account, into this Pershing account, which would always mean that funds are available and liquid and coming up on a regular basis and a rotating basis. You did also just re-up some local CDs at better interest rates as well. So this is not going to be all of the county's assets into this. This will be a blend of the county's assets into this, and I think right now you're, I don't know, a few $1 million initially to start with, and then consider some additional as some of the CDs would mature if we can do better by that. So one of the reasons for doing this is looking back at the investment income performance over the last couple of years, and what it was just dwindling and dwindling and dwindling from a high of almost $500,000 a couple of years to budgeting for less than $200,000 in 2023. Well, one of the adjustments we made to the budget, knowing that trends were coming around, is we budgeted for $400,000 in investment income, knowing that some of those CD rates are going to come back better, knowing that we're going to have the opportunities for some additional investments. So this action supports an additional $200,000 of investment income of our held money, taxpayers' money, working harder for them. And it still offers a blend of leaving investments in the Magic Fund, leaving investments in the local funds, and then investing some through these other tools until we get the balance right.
When I go out to, pardon me, when I renew an investment or look to invest, I always include the 4 local banks, and they have an equal opportunity to submit their rates. And so then after that, it's my responsibility to do what I think is in the best interest of the county, and that is to increase those investment earnings as much as I can. And I agree with Jeff, the past couple of years, the interest earnings have been dismal. Locally, recently I went out and received 2 bids from local banks. One has become a little more competitive. The other rates are simply not competitive at all. And it's just even more worth our while to leave our money in the market, in the money market fund. So if we're able to increase our investment earnings going outside of the county, then I think that is where we're at. And it is an opportunity to increase earnings for the county.
So my question is, and I'm not advocating not to do this, but how is this different than what we could do in the Magic Fund?
We have compared their rates as well, and recently they have come up. I know, if I recall, it was 2019, you had wanted to increase those earnings as well, and then COVID hit and the interest rates had plummeted. That's a good term. They are coming back now, and if it's under your direction, we would increase that fund as well.
Let me ask this differently, because that's not what I'm advocating.
Okay.
I believe that we had people to help us how we could invest in the Magic Fund, correct? Okay, and so we also then with Ellers would have that. But are they offering services, or are they offering options that the Magic Fund cannot give us, or are they just offering better rates?
Both, and I'll give one example of that. One example is we authorized Ryan from Ellers to go ahead and contact the banks and kind of negotiate on our behalf relative to our local investments.
Okay.
And that's something that the Magic Fund would not do.
Right.
And then the investment methods and mechanisms that they have available to them, obviously are guaranteeing our public money as being safe, right? We're not taking it to Vegas. But the nature of the ladder type investments means that you're always getting the best possible increment over every period of time, so that you're rounding out much more reactive and much more progressive. I know the money's changing so fast right now. The rate we got from one of the local banks on one of our CDs, and then I'm driving down the road and I see a higher number flashing on a sign. And I'm like, well, have we had that conversation? And when I was in Bloomington last week, I was talking with some people, and people are talking about better than 6% returns right now on public monies. So Kate is not, especially right now, does not have the time to manage these things and be shopping on a regular basis all the time. So to have somebody watching that and managing a portfolio on our behalf, and our responsibility to you will be to give you an idea of all those investments, all those funds. And the same thing that we have to do with our personal finances, we'll have to find the right balance of what percent of our money should be locally, what needs to be available here, what do we leave in the magic fund, and how is that performing, over time, and then what are we gonna have over here in this fund that hopefully is returning better than the other ones that is being actively managed. So it's just another piece in the puzzle at this point in time, one we haven't used, but one based off of their representation on our fund balances that were available, they were able to easily say we should be able to meet the budget of adding $200,000 to our revenues just from interest earnings this year, which is helpful, because I put that assumption in the budget that you've been looking at.
That was gonna be one of my questions, is if it was safe.
Yes.
Jeff kinda touched on that.
They have to be.
Yeah, we can only have government money invested in, and when I read through this, they do government and nonprofits.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the initial request is to open the account, and then, I think your initial idea was what percentage of that, or what dollar amount were you initially thinking we'd have available for this account?
Well, I need to refresh my worksheet, but currently it's 5 million that we would go out and have laddered. It wouldn't be a 5 million investment, it would be several totaling that amount, whether that is through Ellers, Magic, or local. Again, by looking at the current rates. Currently, the best rate I have in county is 3.65. And I am hearing about over 4, and you said 6, so when it's that high of a dollar, we are talking about a lot of money.
I got 4.8 recently.
And it's a little shameful to be investing county dollars at a low rate when we know we can do better.
It's a dynamic market right now,
We
so.
need to do better.
I would add that investing local is more than just the rate of return, though. Those dollars are being used to invest in the community and starting businesses and
I do
getting
agree
people
with
into
that.
homes and things like that. So there's kind of a hidden value in that too that we need to consider. So I would advocate strongly all the time for coming up with some percentage that is going to be our bare minimum that we keep locally. And then beyond that, we try and do better with rates and things like that. But I think there should be a bare minimum that we keep locally, because that money needs to be working here.
And I'd like for us in 2021 to probably add an investment report to our fund balance reports on a monthly basis, just so that you know the balance and the allocation, so that if somebody were to ask you, you can always say, yep, we know exactly what's going on. At certain points, come with recommendations for your approval, and other points just showing you how things are happening. I mean, I know you all read your statements when you get them on a monthly basis, right? So you collectively should be doing that on behalf of the county as well.
So aside from this motion today, we could include a conversation in the general government as to what percentage to always keep in the county, and then we would subsequently update our investment policy to reflect that.
How would that work with Pershing? Then you'd have a money market account, you'd send $5 million, and then they start laddering them, and then as they mature, they go back to the money market account, and you can draw from that whenever you need it for the county?
And it would be an account at Pershing.
Okay.
Yes. But we would have access to that because I would do a direct transfer from CNB Bank. So we would have that control. And I guess I'm thinking we would invest up to 5 million. It may not be a chunk of 5 million all at once. I will have to work with the bank to do that initial transfer.
So I think what Kay is saying is we have $5 million in fund balance that is not currently invested or allocated, that we have to determine where it goes. So I think a conversation next week at the general government meeting would be really helpful if we can pull those numbers and take a look at that. So that 5 million would not all go here, we're just opening this account to have this additional option available to us. If Eller's representatives work with the local banks and the local banks give us a great deal, we'll allocate a larger portion there. The problem is, of course, with the CD is you're tying up for 12 or 24 months, or I think right now the 13-month are the ones that are performing the highest.
Yeah, it's an inverted, the yield is inverted right now. I mean,
Yeah.
your better ones are like 1 to 13 months and not the 5-year down the road
Yeah.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, in, locally, the 3.65 is at a 12-month.
Okay.
Normally, it's the 36 or higher months that have the better rates, have better returns, but right now, it's a 12-month.
Yes. Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Shar. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
So we'll be sending that to general government.
We'll discuss it next week at general government, yep. That would be the standing time for that, and we can do that.
Thank you.
Administrator.
So I have a couple of items. One is, this came up at the Truth and Taxation meeting last week. But here's the instructions from the Minnesota Department of Revenue for the homeowner's homestead credit refund. And note that there are two qualifications. One is an income basis and exhausts if the household income is over $119,790. And the second one is related to the increment of increase. And the increment of increase here might be one of the things that benefits, as we discussed last week, the shift from the lower valued homes to the higher valued homes was gonna happen no matter what dollar amount we plunked into the levy, right? We were gonna, because of those higher valued homes, if everything goes up 30% of 800,000 is more than 30% of 100,000. So that shift to the higher valued homes is gonna happen anyway. And this is the general instructions that are on the Department of Revenue's site. This form M1PR, the general comment that was made at the meeting on Thursday is check with your tax consultant and see if you qualify for this year. And many people will. And if you look at, I was reading the numbers on the biennial budget for the state of Minnesota and looking at some of the numbers relative to the overage, the budget excess. A lot of that money is in programs that was set aside for programs like this that people haven't claimed. You know, there's a lot of one-time revenues where tax revenues came in higher than they thought, but a lot of it is money that was allocated to programs that hasn't been spent. And so people should be aware that this is something that's available, and I'm guessing that tax preparers know that that's true. The second item is a reminder that we had a notice in the paper that Heritage Community Board was seeking a board member. The deadline has passed. I have received one letter of interest that I will be bringing forward to the Heritage Living Center Board next Tuesday? No, fourth Tuesday. The fourth Tuesday. So we did get one person that expressed a letter of interest, and we'll be bringing that to the Heritage Living Board to approve next Tuesday to start next year, or 2 weeks from today to start next year. The other things on my list that came up is some of the comments relative to budget presentation for next week and what I'm gonna make sure that I have to you. I'll be basically updating what I got to you ahead of the September meeting, which will be the new IFS report, the proposed capital plan for 2023, an updated levy summary, 24 and 25 projections, and then one sheet that I I've developed, and I talked about this briefly on Thursday, is tax impacts, the one that I handed out today. And what I presented at the TNT meeting was the top half of this, which was what came out in their statements that they were looking at. The bottom line is what would happen if we only had a 9% operating increase and weren't capturing the 10% Enbridge money. And I would say that if you look at the 4 residential homestead properties, these are all in Henrietta Township, so they all have the same local taxing rate as well. If you look at the impact on a monthly basis from the residential homestead, it's $6.85 a month is what that 10% is going to cost those average homeowners on this. And if you look at people who are in the under 200,000, in the 200 or under $1,000, it's less than $4 a month is what that's gonna cost them. So I wanted to make sure that we put that in the right context. I know the shift is greater when you have a $3 million home. But it's also, percentage-wise, it's not that significant. The change from 9 to 19 is what I'm comparing here. I know both of those numbers are large. And I would reiterate that you won't be seeing these numbers again, because we won't have that opportunity again. But I would anticipate that we would be, again, seeing new tax capacity, new growth, which on average has been about 2% a year, plus 3 or 4 would be an overall levy increase that would get us to the point of balancing the budget over the next 2 years. And I'll run those projections on labor. I'm gonna run the projections on labor, presuming that we're not adding any positions, that we're managing the ones that we have. So I hear.
I agree with you, Tom.
I'll be saying no some next year.
Yeah.
I absolutely hear those concerns, and I have the same ones. I'm less concerned about adding the wages as I am knowing the uncertain costs of the future of health insurance, right? So that's the one big thing that I look at. So I just wanted you to be able to see the net, the per month cost of that to the residential homestead taxpayers in Henrietta Township, and you could do this for the same for anybody. And
Thank you, this is interesting.
I know you had asked questions about the tax impact in the city of Park Rapids. The spread in the city of Park Rapids is higher to the higher value homes because there are a lot of lower value homes in
Yes,
that taxing
there are.
district, right?
Yes.
And because the city tax on top of the county tax is way more than a township tax on top of the county tax. So that's why you're seeing that significant spread on the high value homes that are within the boundaries of the city of Park Rapids. When you get out to Henrietta Township, you have a lot more parity, and you have a lot of people live not on a lake in a nice $400,000 home or $600,000 home. But there aren't many $600,000 homes in the city of Park Rapids that aren't on the lake. So that's why that happened, and I thought it would be helpful for people to see this. So if you have questions, if you want to run through any other examples, I'd be happy to do it anytime between now and next week, so that you, anecdotally, you're hearing one person at a time and looking at their tax impact, and each one of them individually is significant. But when you're looking at it overall, you have to measure that overall mark. And anyway, any questions about what you want to see next week before you vote on the tax levy and final budget?
I would just like to remind the board that my husband has an unplanned surgery, and it's scheduled for next Tuesday. That was the only day he could get in. So I've already talked to Jeff, and I will be joining remotely. It's a really bad meeting to miss in person, but I can't do anything about that. So,
And just a reminder, I will not be at the first meeting in January. On vacation.
Year in January?
I will be here in January, yes.
So the last item that I have, ahead of preparing the resolution for the budget levy for next year, is, and you've got a worksheet on this too, which is the commissioner pay in the local districts. We will have to set the commissioner pay when we set the budget and levy. So if you want to have a conversation about that, if you want to make a recommendation on that. If we want to do that in committee
Well-
outside of here and add it to next week's meeting, we can do that as well.
I just have a comment. A lot of the counties have gone to no per diems and just a flat rate. And so what we're seeing here is we still have per diems in here, so in some ways, it kind of all balances out. Anyway, but
And
I'm not interested in doing anything. We're already talking about inflation and whatever.
Yeah.
This just stays where it's at.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Yes.
Well, I would be interested in at least that 3% increase.
Well, but that's a kind of a given.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
That's always been.
Yeah.
But to do anything over and above that, I'm not interested.
Maybe in the future.
So do you want me to calculate it with a 3% increase for the next year because that's what the COLA is, or do you want me to leave it flat?
3%.
3%? Okay. And that's been the history?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
What I was telling Jeff before the meeting, and it's fine to be on public, is that, I was the only, out of 4 of us, I was the only one who had competition. I'd prefer to have seen all of us have some competition. I mean, it's good to have the debate, and good that people would be interested in it. And I'm just wondering if, the pay scale is one of the reasons, I don't know.
And it's very late in the year to bring this up to do anything other than what the history has been. But it certainly makes sense. And we had conversation relative to the other benefits for elected officials, to throw that conversation to the Personnel Committee early in the year next year for discussion and development. And then, you can present that before you present the preliminary budget in September next year. It'd make a lot more sense to have that conversation and present it with time for discussion.
But if I'm reading this correctly, this is base pay for Hubbard County, where a lot of the counties aren't messing with per diems anymore. And so this is base pay, but then our per diem is over and above it, which I think if we added all that in, we're kind of in the same ballpark. We can look at it more in the Personnel Committee, but that was my guess.
We can, and I think it, obviously it depends by commissioner, but if we look at the budget for commissioners, and don't break out base pay and per diems, I think I think we're less far behind than this represents.
Yes,
But I
think so.
do still think that we're, comparative to other $50 million county budgets, we probably are behind a bit. Not significantly, but a bit.
And Tom, the other thing, several people do this with another job, but the other job has to be flexible because you can't just say, I'm gonna show up every Tuesday, because this job involves a
It's
lot more.
yeah.
And so I think part of the reason people might not feel they can run is because they don't have a flexibility in their job to accommodate
Yeah.
the demand of the schedule.
And that's even myself. Currently, as the board chair, I think I'm on like 27
Oh, the board chair is
committees.
super busy.
And
Yeah.
normally it would be like 19.
Yeah.
But even when I first came in, I didn't realize that there would be that many more committees than
Yeah.
that. And I think the 40 to 50 mile drive kind of takes away too. I know I had an opportunity before becoming a commissioner to become one of the staff members. And I thought 45 miles one way, almost every day, it just wasn't appealing to me. But I know there's our people that come down here, because when I do come to Park Rapids, it seems like it starts on Highway 71 and it's a constant flow all the way down here. So,
One of the other counties has somebody that was elected on their board now that's a school teacher, and so that person has just said, I can only attend committee meetings at night. Well, I don't have any committee meetings that meet at night. Mine are all during the day or else even later day, but some of this, it's a hard schedule to accommodate with a full-time, non-flexible job.
I have 3 that meet, one every month, and that gets to be a hard thing too, or like extension. When I have to come down here after working all day
Yeah.
and then drive down here, and then if this time of year, we get done around 9 o'clock, and then I get to drive 45 minutes home. It gets to be a long day.
So
But
those
that's
were,
part of the fun.
I think those were the only items that I had to present unless anyone had questions.
Guess we'll move on to committee reports. Anybody want to go first?
I will, because I
Sure.
don't think I did this last time because I didn't know my computer. So I attended my last Prime Health meeting, and it's our last one because we have switched insurances for next year. The only thing I wanted to highlight from that was, as of September 30th, they have a net member equity of $3,646,471. And so Prime Health has reached the point where they feel like they're a stable, healthy position. $3 million of that was seed money that Prime West put in, but they're very pleased that within the 5 years that they have made it to this mark. And we were one of 3 that are leaving for next year. And then what I wanted to highlight out of Prime West was, we did vote to appeal the summary of judgment and so it was a unanimous vote that we would appeal, and it basically has to do with county authority. And so that's why we're appealing. So I'm just going to read the 3 bullet points that were given to us, if anybody asks you. Minnesota county-based health plans are appealing to the district court order granting sovereign judgment to the Minnesota Department of Human Services and denying the plan's motion. The appeal will be heard by the Minnesota Court of Appeals. The county-based plans believe the district court incorrectly interpreted Minnesota's county-based purchasing status, which since 1997 have established the rights of Minnesota counties to provide medical assistance to their residents in partnership with DHS. For decades, the counties have performed this function well by integrating medical services with other benefits provided through counties. The district court order found that DHS has the right to choose to contract with private managed care organizations in addition to the county plans. And we feel that that's adding county expense. We all have to give the same amount of coverage. And so we feel like it's overtaking the county authority. Social services would be an example that we can't decide. And then the third one, through the appeal, the county-based plans seek to clarify the rights of Minnesota counties so they can continue to provide services to residents as they have for decades in the past. And I don't know if you recall, but now Hubbard County this year has to offer 2 plans. So what that does is it increases costs at social services. So that's what I have from Prime Health and Prime West. And I didn't attend the AMC because of my husband, so let's see. Nothing really from my hubby, was there?
Other than our changes in committee.
Yeah,
But we
yeah,
already mentioned that in the past.
yeah. But business as usual there, so. Yep. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, we had a Crow Wing, One Watershed, One Plan meeting, and maybe just a little facts here is that nearly half of Hubbard County is part of this watershed, which Hubbard County comprises 24.3% of the watershed, so we're a significant portion of it. So we need to have that representation for sure. We got together at a meeting recently, and we have a planning budget of, I believe it's $235,422. The first public information meeting probably will be around in June 2023. And the project coordinator and fiscal agent will be our local Hubbard County SWCD. We should have the first, if everything goes on schedule, the first draft of implementation should be ready by August of 2024. And I believe Crystal sent you an MOA, and it'd be nice if we can get that signed on next meeting. If that can
Next
be on the
Tuesday's meeting,
agenda.
yep.
Okay. And then we also had a local watershed meeting, that was recently. With the work plan budget of $21,811, each category will remain the same except transferring a little more dollars allocated for nitrate testing. And other than that, that's about it.
Okay. Good to hear about the Crow Wing and watershed plan. I know that Crystal and our staff, SWCD staff, contributed a lot to the Mississippi Headwaters One Watershed Plan, so to have that experience and now to be able to start this one too. I think we'll be ahead of the curve.
So, yeah, they'll be forming their advisory committee coming up fairly soon. And I think like John, you gave his name as a possible person to be on it, so.
Yeah.
We'll try to get a good diverse group on it.
David, have you got?
All right, I got a little bit, just an update on Heritage. Katie has put together kind of a new operations dashboard that kind of just summarizes everything real nice for us. And our CMS overall star rating is at 2, health inspections at 2, quality measures at 4, staffing's at 4 out of 5. The quality measure went up from 3 to 4, so that's good. As far as staff, in October, we had 3 hires. In November, we had 9 hires. October had 2 terminations, so that was a net of 1. And November, 4 terminations, so that's a net of 5. So we're gaining ground on the staffing area. October, we had 15 FTEs open, and in November, we're down to 10 then. Agency contracts, we had 9 in October, we're down to 8, and we're hoping by the end of the year to have several more of those drop away. Those are the nursing pool that's costing us an arm and a leg to keep those contracts going. So as we get more staff and the right staff, we can drop those contracts, and that's a significant amount of savings right there. We had 18 applicants in October, 20 in November. Retention sits at 55-56%, turnover's at 69% roughly. Occupancy and census, Heritage Manor can hold up to 26. They were at 12 in October and 12 in November. The Cottage has a max of 18. They were at 17 in October and 17 and a half in November. Heritage Living Center, we're set up for 35 right now and staffed for 35. October, we had 30.8, and November, we're up to 33.3, so trending in the right direction. EBITDA, Heritage Manor, EBITDA was negative 39,000 in October. The Cottage was negative 10,000, and Heritage Living Center was negative 37,000. So, and I think we were budgeted to be about negative 30. So, we're still digging a hole in October, the first month of the fiscal year. So, hopefully, that trend with the census increase will start to get closer to where the budget anticipated it would be. That's
just
what I
to-
have.
Just to note too, when we, with Kate with the summary, she had paid Heritage, it was in the, under the consent agenda.
Okay, and for me, on Monday, November 28th, I had a Zoom meeting with probation. Mark Smith, our local DOC probation officer, was part of that meeting. It was basically just kind of a little bit of history and kind of an explanation of what they do, and also they talked about funding, which historically the state is underfunding. And the AMC's actually has one of their platforms, part of the platform is to try to get increased funding there. And also, Mark has reached out, so to whoever is gonna join me at the managers meeting, maybe after the managers meeting, Mark would like to meet with us, kind of discuss where Hubbard County is at, and if and when we would need another probation officer and things like that. At the managers meeting, talked about team development, the healthcare contract, the wellness policy, and payroll. And of course, a lot of the managers were talking about their year-end things that they're getting ready for. Let's see, on December 2nd, had a Zoom meeting with Amy Thomas from the Department of Revenue and
Office of State Auditor.
Office State, that's what I meant. Our auditor, and Hubbard County had a passing grade. There was some, what do you call them, structural things where we don't have enough staff to have some separation in some of the duties. But like Amy said, that's something that we have been dealing with for years and will probably continue to deal with. But there wasn't any red flags or anything like that. It was a good conversation. Let's see, then went down to AMC, made it down there Sunday. Did join in that conversation on housing that Mary was at. It started to run long, so I had to leave early so I could get to the MRC meeting, which there again, that was good. Tom had joined me there, as I recall, and talked about the platform there. We kind of stepped away from a couple of things that AMC has kind of taken the lead on, and we felt, why should we be doubling up type of a thing. I didn't write down what platform, we started to narrow down from 10 things down to 3, and it ended up being 6, and then back to 3, and if you guys are interested in what MRC is gonna be pushing this year, I guess that will be discussed at our next meeting in January, as I recall.
Do you have a date on the meeting in January?
January 9th.
January
just-
9th?
I haven't got a time yet, but,
And it's gonna be Zoom, I think, isn't it?
no, that's,
Did they decide to go in person?
Yep.
yeah, that
Okay,
was
good.
in Alexandria, as I recall.
Okay.
Let's see what I have.
Yep, oh, 10 to 1
Yeah,
in
10 to 1.
Alexandria.
Okay.
Here's the schedule.
Oh,
I need, I mean, if you wanna look at it,
Say January
but I need that back.
I'll put it on my calendar here, thank you.
Yeah, and that's, it's an in-person meeting, so there again, down in Alexandria, that might be tough for me to make it down there.
I'll go.
Okay, and I was gonna say, I won't, probably, odds are I won't be the board chair at that point, so,
I'm tentatively planning on going.
okay, good. And also went to the MCIT meeting on that Monday. Kay voted for, there was an open position on the board. I don't remember who the 2 candidates were, again, I should have taken better notes.
One was from Fergus Falls,
That was, must have been the person, because the other one was from Polk County,
okay?
and it was a large majority that the person won by.
Do you remember which person won?
The one from Fergus, did you say?
Okay.
Yeah. And then I didn't have a whole lot more to report on AMC. Wasn't feeling well Monday, woke up sick Tuesday morning. Ended up leaving shortly after lunch, which I ate by myself out in the hallway because that place was packed. I saw Tom, and I started walking over to that table, and there was no room at Tom's table. So, and I don't know if anybody else from Hubbard County was sitting with you at that point.
No, I was at the Polk County.
Okay.
I mean, you can blame that on Felix, the guy with MCIT. He had a whole bunch of guests there.
Well, I know the other meals and things when we could, Hubbard County sat together, so that was nice. And then, like I say, I come down from my room after doing some county paperwork and stuff and got my plate. It was good timing because the line was not there anymore. Filled up my plate and looked around, and there was nowhere for me to sit, so I sat out in the hallway. Let's see. Missed an HRDC meeting. I had to go to the Truth in Taxation meeting instead. I thought that was more important. So that's all I've got for my committee reports for last month.
Did you want me to clarify who I voted for?
Yes, thank you.
It was Polk County. And you and I discussed that we chose Polk County because of the relationship with solid waste.
Okay.
communities. But they did not win.
Yeah, and what's his name, Willett? I'm trying to draw from,
I'd have to go through my materials. They're in my office.
It's okay, I know who it is, I just can't remember his name.
yeah.
Dakota County.
What?
Was he Dodge County or Dakota
It was
County?
Dodge.
Dodge County Commissioner. The one the president, first vice president.
No, we're talking about MCIT, and
Oh,
this was the
okay.
guy from
This was
Fergus
at
Falls.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
I sat on as a delegate.
let's see. Thank you, Kay. And let's see, any meetings to note? Our next one, next Tuesday, I guess.
So we have a final meeting of the year, December 20th, next Tuesday. And then our first regularly scheduled meeting of the year will be January 3rd, which will also be the organizational meeting on the front end, and then we'll just have a regular meeting after that.
Okay. And then, of course, at our next meeting, we'll decide who will join me at the managers' meeting, which if memory serves me, it's Tom.
I'm guessing, you were at,
Yeah, I
you
was
were
at the last
November?
one. And Dan was at the one before, so it's
Should
either,
I put it on my calendar now?
Yep, you can put it on last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday, the
Not around, so that leaves Tom.
27th?
Yep. And we already discussed, and we are having the meeting. I know there will be a couple people not there, but
If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, David. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?